Welcome, everybody. This is the third event in a virtual series that we've been running out of the Association of Marine Corps Logisticians. My name is Jason Fincher. I am the current president of AMCL for about another month until we have elections, and hopefully somebody else takes the reins. I'm joined tonight by Marine Corps coders Drew Hutchin and Colin Chu, and my VP of Operations, Kurt Steinberg. And Kurt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. So again, Kirk Spangenberg, Vice President of Operations of AMCL. Excited to be here for this one. As many of you know, we've been holding a series of online events, as Jason mentioned. We had a great PME with Colonel Aaron Angel about the logistics training and education continuum and what's coming up with that. We had a great discussion with the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting on how they're bringing agility out to the force. And all these things are, of course, the recaps are available on YouTube and our postings on LinkedIn. So certainly hope everybody has a chance to check those out. And our next in this series is we're here tonight with Captain Colin Chu and Captain Drew Hutchin. Drew Hutchin is sort of, as many of you may know, an esteemed logistician. We love you too, Colin, but we had to point out that Drew is a fellow logistician here and teamed up with some real smart folks to really help the Marine Corps move forward into the 21st century and into the digital operating environment, and really on their own. Is really impressive, and why we asked them to come and talk to us tonight is took the initiative to set up this organization called Marine Coders, which is and y'all, I'm sure, talk in greater detail about it, but helping the Marine Corps and teaching Marines how to fight and win in the digital operating environment and things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Drew and Colin to tell us all about what they got going on in the world of coding. Over to you guys.
Great. Thank you, sir, for the intro. I'm going to share our screen here. We've got a little bit of content to guide the discussion tonight. All right, great. Yeah, so thank you to the AMCL crew for the invitation, Jason and Lieutenant Colonel Spangenberg. My name is Captain Drew Hutchin. I'm here with Captain Colin Chu. Colin, you want to go over an intro of your background in the Marine Corps and where you're at now?
Yeah, so Colin Chu, I've got a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science from Virginia Tech. Came into the Marine Corps as a 0602 communication officer. Served over in Okinawa with 7th Communication Battalion, 31st MU, and then came over to the Marine Forces Cyberspace Command. Met Captain Hutchin over there in kind of the cloud effort, and we were both over TAD to the Air Force at the organization called DoD Platform One. Over to you, Hutch.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. And again, my name is Drew Hutchin. I graduated college with a Bachelor of Arts in Business, Organizations, and Society, so not nearly as technical as Colin. I went on to serve my first tour as a logistics officer in 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, and also 7th Marines. I have a fellow shipmate on this call with me, Matt Evers. Matt, how you doing? So I did my 0402 time in division, went up to Naval Postgraduate School, got a degree or master's in IT management and also an MBA. And then I reported to Headquarters Marine Corps Programs and Resources, where I met Lieutenant Colonel Spangenberg initially. At PNR, our section got pretty involved with implementing cloud for the Marine Corps, and also doing modern, secure, rapid software development on top of that cloud infrastructure. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years for the Marine Corps. And during that time, as Colin mentioned, I got a really phenomenal experience at one of the leading software organizations in the Department of Defense, and that is Platform One. So a lot of what we're going to talk to you about today stems from our experience over the past 2 to 3 years, and a lot of the confidence and skill set we gained with our tour at Platform One. Okay, so with that, Colin, you want to, next slide? All right, so for our overview, today what we want to do is first we want to talk about the state of software in the DoD. We really need just to paint the environment of what we're talking about first before we dive into why Marine Coders and what we do. So we'll talk about the state of software, I think that there's going to be a natural pause for questions after that. And then we can dive more into Marine coders, what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, where we're at, and where we need to get to. And then we'll follow with some questions after that, if that works. All right, Colin, lead us off.
Yeah, so this slide right here, really talking about how software enables speed and speed enables winning. And this is kind of our thoughts on why software is important. So obviously, maneuver warfare is important to all of us as Marine tacticians and strategic planners. Is enabling, right, like the rapid feedback loop. And really, like I'd like to put the white, little arrows in the OODA loop as kind of what you are without software, and the big black one is, right, like you could enable much faster loops, of course, right, like as if you're not sending, logistics requests over the radio, which I've done. It's not it's not faster than being able to send off like an email even, or send them through a system that's specifically designed for it. So we feel that software is inherently really important to the Marine Corps, and especially our mission sets. And this isn't just something that's specifically geared towards towards, I would say, like any specialty, so IT or logistics. I think software, is upon us for all of it. There's a saying like software ate the world, and I like to say like software ate the military too. So kind of what we're trying to show here. Moving on, Hutch.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add on the software is that it, the name of our organization is Marine Coders, and one might think that we're out here just trying to build applications or systems or something like that, and that is partly true, but I think programming, coding, scripting background is absolutely fundamental to get to any of these higher level capabilities that we continuously see in strategic guidance. Those capabilities being artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, unmanned systems. All of those capabilities are really rooted in individuals being able to understand what software is, and also have a pretty good background on how to manipulate programming languages. Also in that conversation is cloud. So as folks move from data centers and managing hardware and infrastructure to becoming cloud engineers, it's really important that they have a pretty solid programming background as well. So that's our pitch for why software. All right, so moving forward to a case study that kind of puts this in a little better context. Our case study is about this application called Puckboard. Puckboard started development in 2018 by 2 active duty Marine Corps pilots. I repeat, 2 active duty Marine Corps pilots. They were sitting in the ready room and they were managing their flight training operations using a whiteboard, a rather large whiteboard, and magnets. And they were scheduling their squadron's flight training with these magnets and whiteboard, and thought, hey, it's 2018. Maybe we could digitize this little thing that we do every day. And sure enough, these 2 pilots set out. They started building out what they called Puckboard, referencing those magnets on a whiteboard. And they got pretty far in what they were doing. So they're real innovators. They got to the point that a lot of innovators get to, and that is, hey, we have this incredible prototype that we built ourselves. The institution, how do we make this real? And the institution, ours being the Marine Corps, really didn't have an answer at the time. There was no development environment for them. There were no tools for them to use. At the time, the Marine Corps was really just getting its feet under itself with the concept of cloud and software development. So, fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at this, Puckboard found its way up to DIU up in Silicon Valley. An Air Force Air Force sponsor took it over. Puckboard now lives at a software factory in Hawaii that's powered by Platform One, and it currently is in use by many Air Force squadrons and actually a few Marine squadrons. So the good news story of it is Puckboard got through. It's quote unquote institutionalized and it's being used by end users in the fleet and OPT4. But the bad news is the Marine Corps had an opportunity on this one, and unfortunately our conditions weren't set to empower those 2 Marine pilots to get their idea all the way to the finish line. So that's just our quick case study, and we'll reference back to it, and it's one of the reasons why, one of the many that we were kind of inspired to go down the route we did with this Marine Coders concept. Okay, so that's a really, really, really specific case study of, 2 pilots out there trying to build an app. From a higher level, you're saying like, how's the DoD doing with software, and what does a third party say how we're doing? So the Defense Innovation Board published this report. It was called a SWAP report. Colin, it's a software acquisition. What is it? Software acquisition?
You asked me to do an acronym in public. Yeah.
Anyway, I love the title on the actual document, which you see on the slide, which is "Software is Never Done," which is really awesome. But there's a lot of great excerpts in this thing. We could probably do a whole conversation about the contents of this report. But 2 of the big ones were this, right? What they said was, if the DoD does not take steps to modernize its software acquisition and development practices, we will no longer have the best military in the world, no matter how much we invest or how talented and dedicated our armed forces may be. So that's a pretty bold statement, maybe a bit of a hyperbole, I don't know. But the folks that sit on the Defense Innovation Board are executives from very successful organizations, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, that are competing in a global environment right now, like a global market right now, and they recognize that software is their competitive advantage for staying ahead of their competition, right? So I think despite that statement being pretty powerful, I think it comes from some pretty reputable sources. And then further, there's a second thing, and like I said, you could pull a ton of quotes out of this thing, but they're basically saying that we need to create new paths for digital talent, especially internal talent, by establishing software development as a high visibility, high priority career track. That's another great statement. One of the things I tease out of that would be especially internal talent. I think what we've relied upon, for better or worse, for many years has been contracted development support. And while that's been useful for a lot of ways, I think in doing that, we've lost the ability to grow our own internal ability to stay ahead of a software-driven world. So another great quote, and the purpose of this slide is really to show how the DoD writ large is doing from some pretty reputable third-party assessors, this Defense Innovation Board. Colin, do you have any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, you really see this when you have 2 different systems that were made by 2 different contractors, and you're like, why do these not talk together? Well, obviously, like it's exactly how the system is designed to work currently, and that's like what's incentivized is kind of like people developing solutions by themselves, and there's no holistic approach to like developing things, which is good for speed, but sometimes is bad for when you're trying to like move data and information between things. So I think, right, like having that skill set at specific places in the Marine Corps is really important, not just in terms of like acquisitions like this quote is talking about, but also across the Marine Corps in certain places. So yeah, I would love to talk about this, but definitely need to probably move on from here too.
Okay, so there's what we're seeing at the Department of Defense level. So the question then becomes, okay, what are we doing down at the Marine Corps level? What's the guidance we're getting in this with this software term? So Colin and I teased out a few quotes from our latest Commandant's planning guidance, and I'll read them here. I think the first one is really saying we're going to invest in data science, ML, and AI in order to unleash the incredible talent of the individual Marine. So the way I read this one, it's like data science, ML, and AI is somehow gonna make the Marine even better, or make them focus on other things, or make them better decision makers, which is true. But I also think the talent of the individual Marine is going to contribute to us being good at data science, ML, and AI. I don't want to go too far down this one, but it's not just the software development talent of an individual Marine, it's the talent of a Marine to understand how important good data entry is in order to enable data science. How to know that entering things in the right fields in the right format is really important so that we get good data to do ML. So I think that's another way to look at that excerpt from the Commandant. Okay, second, and this is one that we're going to circle back to later in the brief, which is Commandant says, by automating the tasks that are repetitive, time-consuming, and routine, we will create the space and the schedule to train, educate, and develop our Marines to the level required by the operational environment. So there's an explicit guidance telling us to go automate some tasks that are routine, repetitive, and time-consuming. And then finally, we're talking about, again, a statement to set conditions so that Marines can focus on warfighting tasks rather than data entry and redundant administrative processes. He says this makes the Marine Corps more lethal. It will also make it easier to recruit and retain Marines who will be able to excel in future operating environment. So again, this ties back to that second quote about automating basic, easy tasks. But I think another way you could read this one is with this recruit and retain concept. So if you bring a junior Marine or junior officer into the Marine Corps today, and their experience on our information systems is not quite up to speed with their experience on their personal devices and web browsers they use at home or their video game they use in their free time, I think there is my hypothesis would be there's probably some negative impact to retention if you feel like when you go to work, your experience on information systems is rather dated, right? So there's another way you could look at investing in software could also positively impact retention if we do it correctly. Colin, any additions on this one?
Yeah, specifically the second one is where we kind of took like our preparatory command for starting Marine coders and why we felt like it was necessary at the time. And I think this is the quote and specifically or like the conversation that really drives a lot of why we're trying to do certain things. And I think, I think everyone here has been a victim of certain times where you have to do repetitive, time-consuming things, and you wonder just like, man, like, why did we have to do that? Like, I get it, like, we're Marines, we'll get it done. But gosh, like, I'm looking at the Air Force guy over there, and he's sitting back drinking his coffee. So maybe they're doing something right, and similar, catch-all to, someone else's, personal device, right? Like, obviously your experience on your own mobile device is probably a lot better. And you're just like, man, like, I think we could actually do better on this one. So, yeah, that's why we felt necessary to do something about it. So.
Yeah, and with a room full of logisticians minus Colin, I mean, I'm looking at Matt Evers there in the corner, and his time as a maintenance officer in our unit, he was a wizard with Excel and was able to pull GCSS, CSV, or Excel files down and put every macro and VBA, well, he couldn't do VBA, but every macro and pivot table he could possibly put together. And that's how he would try to make sense of the maintenance report to our executive leadership at that unit. And I just wonder if Matt was empowered with some different tools, would the products and the organization in turn be a lot better? But Matt, what do you think about that? I mean, you were an absolute whiz with that stuff. Oh, you're on mute. All right, we'll move forward, Matt. We'll get to
you just have to imagine a world when GCSS actually puts out like the information you need to brief your commander, and you're like, why doesn't it? And that's like kind of the questions I think that we have in our heads all the time, which is really frustrating sometimes.
Okay, great. This is a natural break point. We just put a few things in front of the group. Does anyone have any questions on what we threw out so far?
So I'll start. And Jason, I don't know if you like muted everybody. I'm not sure why Matt couldn't talk, but maybe it's operator error with the mute button, perhaps.
Radio check.
There you are.
Okay.
So, and we'll circle back to you, Matt. But I think for Colin and Drew, both of you spent some time at Headquarters Marine Corps. Do you see any evidence that, like, staffs at the appropriate level are taking this concept on and have sort of internalized the idea that, hey, we've got to get after this software and it coming at coming out in terms of like requirements, documents, and resourcing and that sort of thing? What's your assessment on that?
You want to start, Colin? I can take it.
I have a lot of wide responses to that, so I think you should start before.
Okay, so first with like embracing software development, we'll get into it a little bit later in the brief in more detail, but DC information, or DCI, and specifically IC4, is definitely championing this idea of creating a marine application developer or a marine software developer. So if you look at it from a .MLPF perspective, the T training of this whole thing, I do think C4 is embracing. On the material part of .MLPF, I was involved in the pilot program of that cloud implementation when I first showed up at PNR. That pilot is on the right path to become institutionalized in a requirements document. I don't want to say too much on that, but so when you look at the material required to set conditions to allow folks to build software in a modern way, yes. And then also it looks like we're going to invest some time and energy in the manpower model to create actual app developers. Over.
So that's good. I wonder how we in the logistics community will fare when it comes time to populate units, and where does one put a software developer at what level of staff, and what's the MOS? Does it start with 06? Where does that go in the MAGTAF?
I'm going to elect to. We will cover that in a few slides. Yeah.
Okay.
We have a good way to describe all that.
Perfect. I think Matt was going to say something, right, Matt?
Sure. I look back to 2.7, and honestly, like, it was pretty primitive what I was trying to do with spreadsheets. But to your point, Hutch, about being able to churn through some administrative tasks to process data more efficiently. We're using some tools that are available, like the Toolbox and stuff like that, along with some other tools. And it's definitely still a little tedious, but those tools have helped tremendously with our unit at the basic school, where I'm currently the MMO. And just in a few hours, we churned through an immense amount of data. We've got a 20-page PowerPoint, and it's each RO, each commodity, looking at every single functional area, the most high priority stuff. And we've made a tremendous amount of progress because we're bringing to light key issues that get tackled week after week. Because we're able to process data a lot more efficiently. And we've also been able to use that data to end-to-end look at some processes and find some of the bottlenecks. So we found a bottleneck in how we receipt for parts and transfer that to the armory. And so far, it's saved a lot of administrative adjustments, loss of material and stuff like that. And those were just very simple tools that, I think we could definitely take to the next level. And in the latest issue of Army Sustainment, there was an article about that where a chief warrant officer went to school paid for by the Army, and he learned R. He was a maintenance officer, and he built real-time maintenance dashboards pulled from GCSS Army. And that would be a tremendous tool for not just maintenance management compliance, but actually getting to predictive maintenance and operationalizing information to make maintenance decisions. But I mean, we're not there yet at our unit. It would be nice to get there, but we're definitely using tools that are very helpful to get rid of the minutia of the data trend.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that story of the Army Chief Officer, I mean, I think we just keep hearing more and more and more of those stories. And it goes back to one of the first things we talked about was, if you train someone on basic programming language like Python or R, it's pretty remarkable what they're able to create locally if they have access to data. And with that, I think we can shift into the next part of this conversation, which will be specifically about Marine coders and kind of how we view the world here and what we think we need to set forth. Okay, so quick slide here on who we are. So Marine coders, we're a non-official organization, kind of just like AMCL. We don't quite have the 501c3 status, but we're comprised of active duty and reserve Marines, Marine veterans, and U.S. citizens who want to help Marines through code. Our formal mission statement here is to empower Marines to compete in the digital operating environment through access to modern software development tools, techniques, procedures, and resources. And when the remainder of this brief is going to be focusing on access to the modern software development tools, techniques, procedures, and resources. And then our vision really is that every Marine should be empowered to build software to meet mission. I'm not saying every Marine needs to be a programmer, but I think Marines should have this. They should have the ability to use software if they can to do things like produce a real-time maintenance dashboard like this Army Chief Officer did. I think right now what you're seeing in current state is that every Marine has the opportunity to manipulate basic productivity products to do their job. Those productivity products being, not to be vendor specific, but Word, Excel, PowerPoint. That's kind of how we're meeting mission right now. But what if another tool in your toolbox was a development environment where you could access data to some of these authoritative data sources that we have, and then you could be producing, local reports and trying to find efficiencies in your own mission. So that's really the meat of the vision statement. I don't want it to be construed as we think every Marine should become a programmer. I don't think that's true. So, okay, Colin, do you want to hit on our background and how we formed?
Yeah, you can find our website, it's in the bottom right there, marinecoders.github.io. But if you actually go to airmancoders.us, you're actually going to find it's really similar. And that's because we actually forked their project. And so we met this captain as this Air Force C-17 pilot named Christian Breckfield, so Captain Breckfield, who runs Airman Coders. And we met him over at Platform One, and he's like, yeah, I just run this organization. It's called Airman Coders. We empower airmen to compete in using software, modern software tools, techniques, tactics, procedures, and resources. And they're like, man, we should do this for the Marine Corps. So here we are. And so, the power of software, of course, is you can reuse it in multiple different ways. The hardest part for us was trying to really figure out where this would fit in the Marine Corps, as well as our logo. Obviously it took several iterations. Kirk saw us when we had the eagle, globe, and anchors, which we have taken off for now, until we achieve official recognition. Joe, great coming. So yeah, really we were able to get up and running within 3 days of actual work versus probably the 3 months it took him to build the website the first time, which is exactly how you can use software in other contexts too, right? And there should be no reason why you can't share between services. And I think that's a perfect use case and segue.
Okay, great. Yeah, next slide. So this is our mental model for how to make this thing work. Enabling Marine coders, or you could say enabling software developers in the Marine Corps or software development. So we see there's really four main ingredients you need. Those would be tools, training, data, and then environments to do all that work. And then obviously backed by policy and funding, which is what Secretary Spangenberg mentioned in the Q&A earlier. So this is how we're going to try to approach the rest of this brief. We're going to break out these ingredients, and then we're going to try to have a little bit of discussion about if you think our mental model is right, if you think we have a gap, if you think there might be a way to extend it, et cetera. All right, Colin, you want to take the tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So quick for the template is black is kind of what exists and red is currently in progress or not there yet. So obviously you need some place to write code. Like I could, alt-tab into VS Code, right? And here we go. Now we're actually making code here. But that is not something you can do on Mixen right now. And there's a lot of different options for like how we could get around this. Not get around it, but to enable this. And so that's what we're specifically working on. Like there's a cloud version called Coder. You have Bastion and workstations that are on someone else's device. And really the key here is enabling that while still being secure from what you can do with code on a local machine as well. So it's definitely a double-edged sword of enabling people, but also like being secure. So I understand the concern. The second thing here, we put DevSecOps tools and pipelines. We don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole at all, but the way that you can write software now enables you to create software at a rapid rate while still, for the most part, remaining within the boundaries and guidelines, right? So people aren't just like immediately writing script kiddie or pulling in script kiddie code and running that. And now you have an insider threat in your network, right? These pipelines will allow you, to have some checks and balances in that process. And then we put like collaboration tools. So, you need to be able to communicate with your team, both in a development environment and a non-development, but specifically development, right? Like takes a lot of back and forth, and it really sucks to do that over email. Like a chat is so much quicker and allows for quicker and easier feedback loops. So these are all in place through either Platform One or McBoss, and is available to Marines pretty much today. So move on from there.
Okay, so one of the second ingredient in no particular order, obviously, but training. So you got to be able to train these people up. Go back to .mlpf. There's the T. So you got to train folks. So what we're seeing from a TCOM sponsored perspective right now is that you have a pretty defined pipeline at Naval Postgraduate School for the 88XX community. And what you're specifically getting there is the operations research graduates, the computer science grad, the IT management, and maybe a few others. Expose those mid-level career officers, and now I believe some staff NCOs as well, which is phenomenal. To some basic programming. Gunny, was it from Naval X? Who's that?
Yeah,
Brandon Smart.
Brandon Smart, yeah. So he's there as well. I'd be interested for him to see how he's doing there. But yeah, you get exposed to some basic programming concepts and practices, and as I stated earlier, like those basic things are very, very, very important to build up to those higher level ideas like AI, ML, managing unmanned systems all over the world. Like you got to understand programming languages before you really can excel in something like that. And then second, this I kind of touched on this in the 06 or in the Q&A, but C4 is leading the establishment of an 0673 MOS. Well, yeah.
No.
It's so it is
necessary MOS, NMOS.
NMOS. Fortunately, Captain Chu and I, in our role with this Marine Coders, has been able to insert ourselves into this concept and the development of an implementation of this. They were originally going down the route of NMOS. What an NMOS does, or what it constrains you to, is you have to have a certain PMOS in order to go after that NMOS, which in this case, you'd have to be an 06XX to go get the 0673. I, probably pretty biased, was like, no, any Marine should be able to go and try to be an app developer. My 0411 could have done wonders if he or she, knew Python or R and could access the GCSS database. So I'm going to continue that fight to change it from an NMOS to an AMOS, and an AMOS would allow any OC field to go and pursue that. So more to follow on this, and this is something, if you're interested in this topic, it would be good to ping us and see how this is moving along. Right now, like today, we have 2 staff NCOs that are in the Air Force's, I guess it's their coding school. And they're set to graduate here in the next week or 2, actually, and they'll check into a software, a Marine Corps software factory, a Marine Corps software organization in late December. After them, there's a plan to ramp up. We're actually, there's going to be a brief to Director C4 early next week about the plan for that ramp up. And if anyone's interested, I can keep them abreast of how this is going. I will continue to advocate that it should be open to all MOSs because I'm pretty adamant about that. And then our second bucket is really education opportunities. So these are things that aren't, they're not in the institution through TCOM, but there are still opportunities out in the wild that I think folks really should look at pretty, take a good look at. And if the Marines is a good fit for some of these things that are out there, they should definitely send them. So the first would be those residencies and fellowships with software units. Another way to say that would be what Colin and I did at Platform One. So we did a residency at Platform One for 6 months, and I personally grew a ton in that organization. I learned a lot about working in a truly agile organization. I will say it is a lot more chaotic than it might be advertised, and that chaos, it was what really creates the velocity of the unit. So at Platform One, we were moving incredibly fast. It was, you really had to think on your toes every day, but that was a great learning experience, and we also got exposed to a lot of these software development concepts as well. Colin and I were very adamant that it didn't end with us. So we went down the path of trying to publish a MAR-admin to announce the second residency at Platform One, which starts this November. That MAR-admin came out a few weeks or months ago, 595 TAC 20. And right now we have 7 Marines that are going to be doing the next residency at Platform One. So pretty awesome. We're trying to stay in touch with those Marines and create a little bit of community of folks to make sure that they're having just a good experience as we did, and that they're continuing to message the good, the bad, the ugly from Platform One and take that stuff back to their own units. Okay, some other things are like digital use. So these are just, services will buy memberships for these types of code boot camps or just basic training platforms that are open to all service members. So Colin and I see our role is to, find these opportunities and then connect the Marine Corps to them. So we'll continue to do that. Our primary method of doing that is just pinging LinkedIn and updating our website. But if the opportunity is right, we will go down the path of trying to publish more admins like we did for the residencies and fellowships. So, the bottom line on training is I think there's nothing stopping Marines right now from getting trained up on this type on software.
Excellent. Last little thing, Code Bootcamp. So they're running internships now. So side by side with their own software development, they've kind of co-opted themselves and created a different pipeline and really done like an immersive code bootcamp instead of classes. And I think this is actually a really good model because it allows you to come out with like full stack experience versus I went through like computer science bachelor's, and to be honest, like if you asked me to build like a full stack application, like I couldn't do it, even though I had a bachelor's of science in computer science, right? Like I knew algorithms, knew data structures, but like in terms of like actually like, hey, how do I connect this, and what are the ways I'm moving the data and really ingesting and doing front end, like didn't have those skills. And that could be my own failing too. But I think this is a really, really good model and something we should emulate here too in the Marine Corps.
Okay, one more ingredient for me, and we'll turn it back over to Colin.
let's keep it short.
All right, this one, yeah. So environment. So, if the tools would be, giving a Marine a rifle when he checks into a unit, so you give him a rifle. The training would be, you train them up at, basic SOI. And then the environments would be when they show up with their rifle and their basic training, they actually have a training area to go hone their craft and produce value. So that's what we're talking about with environments. Really is the place by which you do development and push applications to end users in production. So what you want to see in environments is just a development environment where developers primarily hang out. They build things in that development environment. They'll push it over to the stage environment where you'll do some testing and make sure the users think it's what they want. And then last, you should go to the production environment for end users to touch it. I will say, in a very mature software organization, this movement from development to production happens near real time, like hundreds of times an hour. Think Netflix, Facebook, places like that. In the DoD, this is very normal to be about a quarterly release cycle. So going from development to production generally is about 3 months, if not more, to do that. So that's somewhere where we really need to improve and keep working at this. All right. So I can answer a lot of questions about this in the Q&A, but I'm going to move forward here. So look at approved DevOps environments today, or software development environments. You have Platform One, which the DoD CIO approved in May. And then in the Marine Corps, you have this thing that's currently termed McBoss. This was the pilot project I mentioned in the first Q&A. This is trending towards becoming a requirement, or capturing a requirements document and then, becoming a program of record. So you're going to see a MAR admin here very shortly that's going to establish this thing called McBoss as an approved application development environment. And then there's a few others in the Marine Corps, but I can talk about those if anyone has questions about that. Bottom line, though, at Marine Coders, we do have access to both Platform One and McBoss.
So the last one, which is actually probably like one of the most important pieces here, is data. And so, yeah, I can do a lot of like algorithms, and like I can do anything I want with no data. It's almost useless. So like you can't just sprinkle a little AI ML on top, right? You actually need access to the data from specific either feeds, in inventory systems, sensors, you name it, right? And you need the ability to, like get that data. So networks are involved, of course. But really, like, you need that in order to make life better. And you need it in order to automate tasks. There just has to be data in, data out, right? Like some sort of like input and output. So the way you do that, in any normal place, is something called an API, or application programming interface, and data feeds. Like every time your ESPN, your fantasy football, team gets a little alert and says, hey, someone's out with an injury, or, like COVID or something like that you're getting now, that's all through data feeds and APIs, right? Like this is not like, ESPN gets the same data to all those other apps like Sleeper or whatever, your fantasy football league app of choice, right? They didn't all come up with their own data. not everyone's like watching and like, oh yeah, like this guy's at, well, there might be, especially in the sports world, but like it's the same concept that's applied to the Marine Corps. But like the problem sometimes is that like you have a lot of siloed data or things that were created without really a strategy in mind. And that's where, having a data strategy that's coming down is super critical. And this is going to have to be an iterative approach. And you guys already seen it, I'm sure, with logistics, is that it's a very duct tape approach at the moment. And it will continue to be until like there is a senior, leadership push to make this happen. And so you can see that actually in the Marine Corps is called TSOA, Tactical Service Oriented Architecture, is actually in the COC. This is also per record under C2S2. Oh, gosh, I'm going to forget which Mark or Syscom PM it's under, but they have created data feeds inside the COC that you can subscribe to and create, little applications. This is somewhere, the MIGs could immediately start having applications work through. I'm not sure which version of COC MLG has, but I mean, that could obviously be something that's immediately useful to you guys. But like a little bit big picture, you got something called JADC2 or Joint All-Domain Command and Control, a little bit of a mouthful. Now it's called like Combined JADC2. So like, hey, allies come too. And this is all under the Advanced Battle Management System, which is an Air Force and Army kind of push. And they have an MOU. The Navy hasn't necessarily said we're going to play with it. And you're seeing like all this strategic, kind of like wishy-washiness because we've invested a lot of time, money, and resources. And it will continue to be a problem. So you have to like have kind of an intermediary solution right now, which right now is, hey, you just got to write it into your own program or be very creative about how you're getting your data. So this is definitely like what we consider like a critical shortfall, like, to this being successful overall. And again, it's definitely the one that you want foot stomp is like, hey, we really need to establish, again, not through like an overarching necessarily means, it has to be an iterative approach to solving this problem. So move on from the soapbox there. Kind of, we talked about this throughout the slides, but this is the current status of where, what we've done and what we still need to do. And again, policy and funding, assuming we are able to become kind of an official organization here, or if we live in infamy as an unofficial organization, either way, you still need a little bit of policy, a little bit of funding to make that happen. And so we'll definitely be pursuing that.
Yeah, and I'd say, if stay on this slide, Technical Spangenberg, I'm pretty sure you led a pretty awesome effort trying to, set up like a data analytics branch at MLG. I might be butchering the Gazette article a little bit, but if you really think of that, what you were trying to do there, it really needed this triangle to be successful. I think the tools in the environment are finally coming along when you're seeing these software development things getting approved and ATO'd and all those great words. You're seeing training, so we're starting to train people. We're trying to find people to go learn some of this stuff. But the data thing, I think, would still be a blocker for that concept to be realized. Interested to hear what you would think about that. I know you spent a lot of good time on that topic.
So yeah, I think it was the innovation challenge. In fact, I think Jason was involved in that as well back in his active duty days, right? So we submitted, a group of us did, this idea of creating data analytics or data science cells at really in the MLGs, and we got a little bit of funding from INL because we won that innovation challenge. And we were able to bring together a group of folks to ideate and kind of come up with some ideas on how we could do that. And we pursued it for a little while. We had some monthly gatherings where we were able to present some of the projects everybody was working on. And of course, summer PCS season came about, and it sort of petered out a little bit. But it was a grassroots effort. So to your point on policy and funding, it really is sort of necessary to get some of that overarching stuff in place, because what you find is the people, and I'm sure you'll find some of these same things in the coding world as we found in the Association Marine Corps Logisticians world, is those who are the most passionate, who really feel strongly about this stuff, they're working really hard at it. They tend to also be the ones who have somehow managed to find the toughest jobs in the Marine Corps, and they're just up to their eyeballs at work as well. So I don't know what the correlation is there. I could guess a little bit, but that's what you find. So we got to, at some point, it has to get enough critical mass such that it has someone's doing this as their job, right? As their job instead of as a extracurricular activity. That's sort of where we need to get to.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. I'll probably end up piling on. You kind of stole exactly what I was going to say, but I really like your triangle, and I think effective change management, effective technology implementation. It's almost a cliche to say people, processes, and technology now, but you really have to have that, and that's one of the reasons why your argument to have the app developer be all MOSs, because you're going to find the most success in those locations where you have someone who actually understands the problem and has the skill set to address the problem, and then this technology available to actually have a tool or something they can work with. So I mean, that's like Matt being able to go through. One of the reasons why he's so successful with data is because he knows the readiness and the maintenance and supply process. You can't identify a choke point if you don't know a process. So, like I said, almost at an intersection that gets back to that people, process, technology, and your training is a part of it. Your technology is your environment, your data, and your tools. But yeah, I mean, that's great stuff, guys.
Yeah, and I think the title of the article, I think it was in the March 2019 Gazette, if I'm not, it was Data-Driven Logistics.
That's right.
Was that one?
Yeah, we have a couple of
shout out.
Yeah, we have a shout out. Right? We have a couple spin-offs on the blog too from that same era where we were talking about data management and how to build a better site for using data.
It's the same thing that's eating my lunch today at LogCom, by the way.
Yeah. I think this is a good little analogy or anecdote here, but I've had a buddy that got out at 15 years. He was an 0402. He works at Amazon now, and every time I talk to him, he keeps asking me, have you got spun up on SQL yet? If you get out, you got to be spun up on SQL. I'm like, why? Like, Chris, I thought you were like a project manager. Why are you doing SQL? What are you doing? Are you in tech? And he says, no. Like, I know SQL, and it allows me to pull any data I want from Amazon supply chain, and I can take that data and create reports, and I don't have to submit my RFI over to the data analytics section for them to turn on it in 2 weeks. And that's really powerful to me, because I think that's what I'm like. The triangle really is what it is. Like at Amazon, these folks are empowered, if they know what they're doing, to get access to the data and manipulate the way they need it. And not manipulate it, I mean use it the way they need it. You're not changing the integrity of the data, the database. You're just using it to understand your operation and then present that in reports that you need to.
So I think if I could jump in, you're really kind of talking about democratizing data, right? It's becoming like a commodity. And so when I spent some last year at INL, we put together some training. Matter of fact, Jason wrote the training for us. Basically data visualization for action officers. It's a very basic. Take any Marine who has to use data in their job, which is just about everybody. You mentioned before the 0411s. I mean, who more than that is in data all the time, right? Where just this is how you take the basic data that I have access to and turn it into a useful visualization to inform decision at the leadership level, right? It's really about driving it, which is really, I like your earlier point about speed of decision is what we're about, and so we put some training together, and I think it's still going on and even growing from there of how to teach Joe Marine, this is how we can leverage data in the course of our jobs. But back over to you.
Yeah, I think we just got one more slide here, and so it's just a little demo here, and then we'll wrap up. I know we're like way over time for the presentation, but we'll pretend like we planned it this way. So the first thing we did was find a small use case that we could test out this concept with, and the first one that we wanted to automate the tasks that were repetitive, time consuming. If you guys have ever made a naval letter format document. Yeah, I mean, I would say raise your hand, and then if you've ever had a kickback for formatting, it just is a thing, right? So I'm going to bring you over. Can you guys see the screen right here? Cool. So on our website here, this hosted on GitHub, if you go over to projects and then our naval letter format generator application, you know, we can create a document in real time here. HTML, where are you guys located at?
The globe.
I don't know the place. USA. You can look up your SSICs and you know your manual. You know, this is for me. Date's 19 November. Almost did that wrong there. You know, 0602. Get some. And then we'll send that to, you know, myself, hi me, via Captain Hutchin, right? Via Association Marine Corps Logisticians, you know, founder. And then hello world. Hi back. And then obviously put in your signature. And just, I think that was what, like 2 minutes right here. We can generate our document. It goes ahead and downloads. And then you should have a nice little format document. So theoretically, it's just that easy, right? And this took us 3 days over the course of a couple months that we all had like little hackathons that we were able to create. And you can see all the source code over on our website of how that works. It's pretty ugly, just be warned. But you can actually see it right in here. This is the page, and this is how it's working. So I mean, it's not anything secret. It's very simple. It's just HTML and JavaScript, and anyone can do this literally today. So this is the pitch, really.
So yeah, it's a really basic app. It proves out that, you know, active duty Marines can do this. We hosted 3 hackathons to get after this. I think we had about 6 to 8 Marines dial in, all different each time, and we just picked the feature on there, and each Marine went after it and hacked at it, and then at the end we brought it together to make it what it is. The second thing we kind of proved out with this one is we were able to deploy this to Platform One's stage or test environment, which is on the Doden. So we basically went from an open source website, GitHub, and we're able to deploy it into a DoD network, which is pretty slick.
That's pretty awesome. Can a Marine out there today get access to this to write their document?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, everything I just did, you can go to our website and do exactly that. And so we'd love feedback from any Marine out there who's using the tool and said, hey, this isn't working, so that way we can fix it. Which there's definitely some known issues, like anything past page 2, the header's all jacked. But it's getting there, right? Like you have to start somewhere.
Think big, start small, spiral up, right?
Exactly, sir. Yeah, we and again, this isn't like the end state for us either. This was just like, let's just prove we can do this. And it was amazing the amount of Marines that showed up. We had folks from the cyber schoolhouse dial in. We had folks from MPS. We had an admin major, thank goodness, dialed in on the last one to keep us on track, which was super helpful, right? He was not much of a coder, but he was a good, what we'd call a product owner. And he really drove it to get it to a good spot.
Nice.
It was yeah. But yeah, that's an example of what we're trying to get at. And you can think of so many different use cases for a Marine getting access to tools, environments, and being able to build something useful for their local command.
Nice. So are you guys gonna think about hosting hackathons in the future? You know, maybe putting out solicitations on your site and on LinkedIn to like, hey, what's the next thing we ought to hack on? So what's the future in that?
You want to take that, Hutch?
Yeah, sure. I just feel like I talked a lot. Absolutely. That's exactly what we want to have happen. We were asked in a FedScoop interview, like, how do you prioritize your projects? And we're like, we don't pick what projects we're doing. We want people to come to us with projects, and then we can create a community of folks to work on that project via hackathons and stuff like that. So if there's marine logisticians out there that have a good idea, again, we don't need to be recreating GCSS Marine Corps, but maybe we have a little small data translation thing you need to do at your local command. I think one of the values Marine coders can bring today is that we can assemble some pretty savvy Marines that are out there that can help you on your project. And
the thing to note, right, like with our proof of concept is there's no data stored like at all. This is all local machine. So we don't have the timelines associated with like a traditional ATO or something like that. But I mean, obviously we want to move at the speed of relevance. And oh God, sorry, that was a buzzword right there. We want to write it down and use the continuous ATO and the ATO processes that we saw at both P1 and McBoss that will help the individual Marine developer be able to actually get things approved in probably like a less than 30-day timeline. It's real. I mean, we've seen it happen. This is not like fantasy.
I'm sold. Let's think of a logistics problem. Matt,
for sure.
Matt, think of a logistics problem you need to solve. Let's see the Marine coders on it.
That's right. Which one, right? There's a list.
Start small and iterate.
I don't know. Before we turn it back over to Jason, our founding president here, for final comments for Colin and for Drew, what's your call to action here? What's the thing you want to leave us with before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that, even though I'm not the logistician in the room. But obviously, like, we want people to get involved, at the grassroots level. We're talking with 2MIG, and they're like, yeah, we want to start this as like a club over 2MIG and incentivize people to join in and have this skill set in their back pocket, so that way when we need it, we have that, readily available. And so same thing with like any logistician who wants or has a Marine who's like kind of interested in it, like vector him towards us so we can, help mentor them and give them the tools and training they need to help make their lives and everyone else's lives a little better. So that's specifically it. We have our how to join us here on this slide, and we'll shoot you guys like the details if anyone asks you guys how. And that's really, I think, the big takeaway. Hutch, you got anything else?
No, that was so well said. I'm so glad I had to take that. Yeah, if you know Marines or you are a Marine that has any interest in this, like, we are here. We're trying to like get our experience out into the Marine Corps, and so it doesn't just stop with us and what we've seen both at the Marine Corps and at Platform One. So please connect, and we'll try to get everyone on the right path. I really want another project too. So if someone has a little project, we don't need to change the world with it, but just a little project for us to go after. I think we could schedule some more hackathons around it.
Right on. So, all right. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys taking the time. I appreciate our audience for dialing in. And for those here, hey, share it on your networks, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, to point people towards Marine coders in your network. I think that's great. And of course, don't forget to give us a shout out here at AMCL as well, right? As many of you may know, and also for those who end up watching this online on YouTube or whatever after the fact, it's all good. Reminder that we've got lots of opportunities to get involved with AMCL coming up. There's a executive committee elections. Get your name in the hat for those, or lots of opportunities to be local coordinators at your base. And start hosting events and that sort of thing. Our next thing coming up is we'll have Colonel Kevin Collins, the director of the Logistics Combat Element Integration Division at Combat Development Directorate over there at CDNI, who is sort of the linchpin for force design as it relates to the logistics. And we'll be talking to our members about the future of logistics and the Commandant's Force Design sort of concept and where we're going and what we can expect. He'll tell us at least what we know and what's releasable today. So that'll be really exciting on December 3rd, same time, same channel, around 1800 Eastern Standard Time, and we'll get more on that. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Jason, if you have any closing comments.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, you guys. I didn't know much about your organization coming in, and I feel like there's a really natural alignment between what you're doing and what we've been doing. And I think I'd like to keep this, keep this relationship going. So if you guys have questions where you want to go forward, 501c stuff, anything like that, keep us in mind, and we'll see if we can get, some engaged logisticians to start giving you some problems to chew on that are more complicated than standard naval letter format. We'll see. But this is great stuff, guys, and great work. I think we're seeing the innovators kind of bubble to the surface in the Marine Corps, and I think you guys are right there. So that's awesome, and we'll direct as much traffic as we can in your direction.
Thank you so much for hosting us.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate it.